Let's start on the defensive side of the football. They signed Clelin Ferrell earlier today. They signed Dorrance Armstrong as their first guy out of free agency. To me, I like both of these. You still, obviously, to make this defense really sing, you still need, to me, that upper echelon pass rusher, and that might be a multi-year project. Those guys are really hard to find. But what do you make of Ferrell and of Armstrong? I know you've had a chance to watch quite a bit of Armstrong at this point, as he was obviously the first one in the door.
Yeah, and obviously we knew about Dan Quinn a lot longer before we knew about Armstrong. So you watched a lot of Cowboys defense, and he stood out as a guy. And I think there's quite a few more guys that could be coming in that stood out from that defense as well. But yeah, I think Armstrong is a guy that obviously made a lot of sense. He comes with a lot of versatility. In terms of play style, it's not too dissimilar to a guy like James Smith-Williams that can obviously line up at end, play at end, but shift inside to defensive tackle in kind of rush situations. I think James Smith-Williams is a little bit bigger than Armstrong, and Armstrong is probably a little bit quicker. So there is a difference, obviously, but in terms of play style, that's kind of what you're getting. Is you're getting a quite a versatile guy that can kick inside and line up all over. Really, we saw with the Cowboys last year, certainly with Micah Parsons, but obviously everyone else was involved in it, in lining guys up, standing them all up and moving them around and letting Parsons basically line up against whichever blocker they thought he could beat, which was pretty much everyone. But it was about finding the matchups, and Armstrong gives them someone that can replicate that. And obviously, as you say, they still got to find that upper echelon guy. Trying to find a Michael Parsons is not easy, but finding someone that you can move around and manipulate matchups and make things work for a guy like Armstrong is a really nice supplemental piece to that kind of guy.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the other thing people need to remember is it's not going to be a carbon copy of Dallas's defense. That's not lip service from DQ and Joe Witt Jr. And I think one of the things that is a huge difference is there, Parsons and Tank Lawrence are the guys. The guys here, as this team is currently constructed, which can change over time and undoubtedly will, are Daron Payne and John Allen. And so it's like, okay, the concept, the principle is we need to find good matchups. Who is finding those matchups? Who is trying to be the person that they unlock is very different here. And so what I like about Armstrong is that position flexibility to move around and the fact that he plays with like the physical nastiness and the finish and willing to do the dirty work in the ways that Dan Quinn wants all of his players to do. And I would say from what I know about Clelin Ferrell, the same thing is true. This is a guy that I think gets a bad rap because Mike Mayock, for some ungodly reason, took him in the top 5, top 10?
Fourth, I think.
Yeah, the fourth overall. And it's like, well, if you're taking a pass rusher or an end fourth overall, he should be a dominant pass rusher. He should be like a Micah Parsons type. He's not. That doesn't mean he's bad. He is a hard edge setter. And I actually think this could, sadly for me, as James is a guy that I absolutely have loved getting to know over the last couple of years. Like, I think this is probably the end for James and maybe even Casey Toohill as well, although I still think there's room for one of those guys to come back. But Ferrell is a guy who sets a super hard edge, probably can play with a little bit of flexibility in terms of positions. And what that does is it allows you to move John Allen outside, move Daron Payne onto the edge, and give tackles, especially if that's a weak link of a particular O-line, a really tough, different look. And that's something that I think Logan's done a great job of talking about over the years is it's like, if you understand who a player is and you're used to playing against that body type, you can block that. So there's certain guys that were awesome pass rushers that Logan actually was okay with as a tight end blocking one-on-one because he knew how to block that body type and it matched with his skill sets. There's other guys who were nightmares for him, even if they weren't actually quote unquote that good of players. And I think that using that positional versatility, and I'm going to use versatility instead of position flex to not trigger everybody, positional versatility, and realizing that the two inside guys are the guys that you're trying to line up makes these signings make a lot of sense and is the reason I think I like them a lot.
Yeah, I agree. I think the upside of it is that they're both solid players that you could rely on to say, right, we need starters. Obviously, they needed everything at defensive end. They had basically no one on the roster. So these are two that you can say, right, we need starters. We'll just plug them in right now. And then if someone falls to you in the draft, or you want to package those picks and move up and go get someone in the middle of the first, or for whatever reason they decide not to go quarterback at 2 and try to take one of the top pass rushers, whatever you do with finding another pass rusher, whether it's a rookie or you trade for a guy or whatever, you can drop them in and you can say, okay, well now Ferrell and Armstrong become our depth pieces, and that's a really nice rotation that starts to be built. So I think they're really fundamentally sound signings. They're not necessarily going to be these like 10 sack a season guys, but they don't need to be. You're not looking for them to be that, as you say, that this defense is built around Jerome Payne, John Allen, and those are going to be the guys that they're trying to find the matchups for. You need the supplemental pieces, and then these guys, as you say, they can play on the edge. Farrell certainly can set a really strong edge. Armstrong's a pretty solid run defender too, and they can move around certainly in rush situations and try to find your best matchup. So I like these signings because they don't block a pathway for if you find some rookie that's a really good rusher and you want to get him more reps, you can quite easily put them above either one of these guys, but or alongside them, and you build a nice rotation.
Yeah, is there? We've talked about this obviously on Take Command, and you and I have messaged a little bit. It seems like I think you and Logan, when you guys are breaking down a lot of these prospects and kind of looking at what you think would be a good schematic fit, are on the same page in a lot of places. So we've talked about, oh God, now I've just Darius Robinson from Mizzou a lot is the guy that we really hope falls. Like to Logan, that's like the prototypical guy. Obviously, Chop Robinson is a tantalizing athlete that if you're like, what if Dan Quinn gets his hands on that guy? Is there a guy that you particularly like if he falls to 36 or 40 that you would be like, please run the card to the podium?
I don't have I haven't done a huge amount of work on the defensive ends or the pass
Okay.
rushers just yet. I've been focused more on quarterbacks and then tackles. So I haven't done a huge amount of them. The two that you mentioned are the two that obviously I've seen a little bit of, and they're the names that frequently come up around that kind of area. Everyone else seems to be kind of either 10 to 20 range or sort of beyond 50. So I kind of feel like Chop Robinson might go a little bit higher just because he is that kind of athletic freak. The Darius Robinson might be more in line with where they're going to pick, but I don't know if he necessarily. I don't necessarily see him as the kind of elite edge rusher, and again, you're not necessarily looking for him to be that with a second round pick, but I think he kind of would be another guy that you fit into that rotation of suddenly building out this solid core of guys on the edge that you can rotate in and out, because you look at the best defensive lines in the league, and it's not just a front four, it's a front eight, like that you're able to rotate guys in and out and give guys breathers. And your top guys are playing 60 or 70% of the snaps, but you need to be able to keep them fresh and rotate guys in and out. So, and obviously go through different personnel looks, and you have a rush package where you might have 5 guys on the field, or you might have a coverage package where you have 3, or, so you need to be able to be versatile, and the guys that they've got in Armstrong and Ferrell give them that versatility.
No doubt. And it feels like Robinson would actually kind of fit that same similar mold, maybe a little bit more pass rush juice. But they actually have signed a guy with some pass rush juice. Frankie Luvu can get after it a little bit. That dude is an animal. He is exactly what you want in a Dan Quinn type of player. We had Anish Shroff, the play-by-play voice of the Panthers, call into the radio show yesterday, and he's like, Derek, what's his name? Derek Brown was the best player on that team last year. Obviously, he had a monstrous, historic season for a defensive tackle. Brian Burns is probably the best known player, and wow, good job Carolina botching that deal. But the guy who was the heart and soul of that defense, which, by the way, that defense was actually pretty solid last year, especially because it got zero, like negative support from the offense, which is why they went 2-15. But the heart and soul of that defense was Frankie Luvu. And now there's been multiple coaching staffs that have gone through and had him and been like, oh my God, this guy's incredible, universally respected, universally beloved. Not always in the right spot 100% of the time, but there's a phrase that I love that's like, if you make a mistake, make it quickly. And that is Frankie Luvu. He will get wherever he is going quickly, and it is often the right place, and he arrives with force. I know you studied him a little bit and have put some stuff up on your Substack. Again, markbullock.substack.com if you would like the visuals. But what do you like about Luvu, and how does he fit in, do you think, next to Jamin Davis?
Yeah, I think what you said right at the end there, where he does everything quickly, and even if you're in the wrong place, get there quickly. That really sums him up quite well. some of the run fits are a little bit off at times with him, but as you say, he's doing it quickly. He's triggering quickly, and he's getting to whatever gap he's trying to get to as quick as he can, and that can create some issues. And even if he's in the wrong gap, it can force an early cutback and let someone else make a play. In terms of the overall, the thing that everyone's going to be looking at is the pass rush ability, and he certainly brings a lot of juice as a pass rusher. He's violent in terms of not just he has good hands that can knock hands down and beat guys. He will just run headfirst into running backs and knock them over, and use his size to do that. So that is a lot of fun to watch. He can line up all over the place, a bit like what they did with Parsons, but you're not going to do it as frequently as you would with a guy like Parsons. But yeah, he lined up off the edge. He lined up over the middle, over guards sometimes, and they got him some different matchups, and they did a quite nice job of getting him on running backs quite frequently. And he makes running backs really struggle to pick him up. So yeah, you like what he can offer as a blitzer. I also really like what he does in coverage. He's very quick and mobile. He's not like an ancient linebacker that can't move. He can move his hips. He can open his hips, turn and run with guys, and he can change direction quickly. And he closes really quickly on things underneath. So his tackling can be a little bit hit or miss, but for the most part, it's pretty good. And he, as we kind of talked about, he always gets there quickly and violently. So more often than not, that's enough for him to make a tackle. Yeah, I think there's a lot to like about him. I think he's probably going to be the Mike linebacker. I would guess, given the kind of, he's not been extortionately paid, but he's been well paid. And I don't believe in Jamin Davis being a Mike linebacker anymore. So I think I would guess Luvu's going to be that guy. He did that some last year. I think he started the year without the green dot, and then they had an injury, and he kind of shifted inside and got the green dot and kind of called the defense, and looked fine doing that. He certainly didn't lose any speed in waiting around at the line of scrimmage trying to read things like other guys have done when they've been given the green dot. He still went fast, and that's what you need from a linebacker. So yeah, I quite like him, and he seems like he's going to be a good fit for this system particularly. So feels like it's a pretty good move from them.
Yeah, no, I love it. Like, we got off the phone with Anish, and I was like, can the season start tomorrow? I want to see this guy play. So I'm very excited for Frankie Luvu. Seems like a great dude. And yeah, I think that's the other thing too. The overarching theme, I think, of a lot of these signings is they're Dan Quinn guys, like off the field. Who they are as people, the personalities, the perseverance at times. Like, Luvu's story is amazing. Undrafted free agent, signs with the Jets, is a backup, works his way onto the field. All of a sudden, Carolina is like, I think we're going to start you. And then he has 111 tackles and 125 tackles in back-to-back years. And it's like, oh, you're a very, very good starting linebacker. So now Dan Quinn's going to snatch you up, and off you come to Washington. All right. That leaves, I guess, the rest of the defense TBD, obviously. Safety, corner, do you have any preference in terms of which direction you feel like they need to go in free agency? Like, do you feel like they have a free agency need at either position?
I would say they definitely need a corner.
I would agree with that.
Yeah,
I
certainly.
was trying not to lead you as a question asker, but yeah, they need a freaking corner.
Yeah, like I think Forbes has a chance to be quite good in this defense and how they want to be so aggressive and attacking down on everything, and then that suits what Forbes does. St. Juste, I'm still not sure on. I still think he's very toolsy. That kind of long corner. Certainly that Dan Quinn cover 3 style 5 or 10 years ago, St. Juste would have been an ideal fit for that. I don't think they're going to do that so much now. So it's going to be interesting to see how they fit him. But I think they need a veteran starting corner and probably a nickel as well. So yeah, definitely need to be adding a corner or two.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see what they do with Quan. Like, is he your nickel or is he a safety? That's kind of been what I've been wondering this whole time, and kind of waiting for an indicator, but they haven't actually signed a DB yet. So, then again, we'll hit end on this live stream in whatever number of minutes that is, and then they'll sign one because that's how things work. But hey, that's why I have a radio show. It starts live at 4:00. Okay. Offensive side of the ball. Austin Ekeler is obviously the headline grabber, but I think more importantly, they have now depth On the offensive line, they got a center, they got a guard. Allegretti is from Kansas City, of course. Nick Allegretti started in the Super Bowl. He was the backup there to Joe Thuney, who missed the AFC Championship game and the Super Bowl. Allegretti finished the Super Bowl with a torn ulnar collateral ligament in his elbow. So we'll have to see, obviously, if he's even going to be ready for training camp. I would be stunned if he's ready for the offseason based off what those timelines usually are. But presuming he gets back to full health, who is he as a player, and is he definitely the starting left guard?
Yeah, for me, just looking at the contract doesn't say that he's necessarily a guaranteed starter, and the injury suggests he's going to be competing for a job, but not necessarily starting. I guess it really depends on how quickly he's able to come back from that, because if it's something that he's going to miss OTAs and mini camps and then summer training camp or maybe even the start of the season, then obviously he's not your starting left guard. If it's not that serious, or he's able to play through it or whatever, then maybe they do see him as their starting left guard. But for me, the contract is quite similar to the one that Rivera gave Wes Schweitzer a few years ago, to kind of be the backup swing guard that could fill in at a couple of different spots, and obviously filled in at center and left guard and right guard, and ended up becoming a starter. But I would guess there's an interview with him going around. I think he did an interview with NFL Network or something the other day, where he said he's looking for an opportunity to be a starter. So I would guess the reason he signed is to have a chance to start. But the contract certainly doesn't say he's definitely locked in as the starter. So and the injury is kind of what determines whether he'll be ready to compete for that job or not.
To me, this also the way that they've gone about this. I mean, Biotish is a necessary signing if you're going quarterback at 2. You need to have a veteran center with a rookie quarterback. Needs probably too strong if you want really to be successful. Then again, I think there's a chance that whoever they draft at 2 doesn't play a whole lot this year, so we'll see. But having that veteran around, if you're gonna draft and hopefully start a rookie quarterback, Biotish becomes necessary. But like Ricky Stromberg was a 3rd-round pick last year, and it certainly seems like their internal in-house evaluation of Ricky Stromberg is they don't care. That they are not being like, this dude needs to start for us because he was a 3rd-rounder. And like, great depth piece potentially, but Stromberg's going to have to come into camp and really like dominate to me based off of what it seems like they think of him on whatever film they thought of him coming out of college and the limited amount of time that he got last year. And I'm assuming how he fits with what Bobby Johnson wants to do with that offensive line and Cliff Kingsbury's offense.
Yeah, I think that's the thing for me. It's probably more about the fit, because my understanding of what the Kingsbury system, and then from watching a bit of Bobby Johnson and understanding him, is they're looking to run more gap scheme stuff. And Stromberg was always more of a zone scheme center in college, and yeah, he could pull and move a little bit, but he wasn't necessarily the guy you want doing that, and he certainly wasn't the guy you want trying to secure down blocks and hold a nose tackle at the point of attack. He's a guy that needs the movement of the zone scheme to help him block those bigger guys. So I think in terms of the fit, that's not necessarily. I think that's probably why they've gone in a different direction, and maybe he can bulk up a little bit and develop. But I guess that's probably why he's certainly not being considered as a starter right away.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So you got Biotish, and if you want more on Biotish specifically, Mark has written that up on his Substack. So go to marksbullocks.substack.com for that. And you get, again, the visuals and kind of not just explanation, but you get to see on film what he does and some of the things that make him a really solid signing for Washington. We mentioned Ekeler. Anything in particular on Ekeler that you think is noteworthy? Like, he's the biggest name because he's led the NFL in touchdowns over a very long period of time. Fantasy players, obviously, very familiar with Austin Ekeler. But realistically, like, probably coming in to be a 3rd down back and back up Brian Robinson. And then what does that mean for Chris Rodriguez?
Yeah, I think the question with him is he looked like he played hurt last year, and he didn't have the same explosiveness that we've seen from him in the past. And if it was a case of he was hurt and he's over his injuries, and you get him fresh, and by moving him to kind of a 3rd down back role, you help his body a little bit more, and he's able to regain some of that explosiveness, then yeah, it's a really nice move. He certainly in this offense, the running back will catch a lot of passes, and they do a lot of. Kingsbury loves to move the running back a lot, and go to empty sets and try to find some matchups that way. So he fits that perfectly. If you're getting the guy that you talked about leading the league in touchdowns a few years ago, if you're getting that guy, then that's awesome. But I think there's big question marks over whether you're getting that guy because of how he looked this year. He certainly looked like he had lost a step and was declining, and you never want to be overpaying. And I don't think they necessarily are overpaying. It's not a prohibitive contract that they've given him for a running back, certainly compared to some of the running backs were getting $12 million a year on average yesterday. So he's not getting that. So it's not a prohibitive contract, but you don't want to be getting into the business of paying guys that are declining too much money. So certainly at that position where you can usually draft a guy and get 80% of the production for 10% of the value.
Right.
So, I think overall the fit, if you get the right guy, and if you get the same guy that he was 2 years ago, then yeah, it's great fit. But a lot of it depends on if his body is declining or whether he was just playing hurt last year.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. And I would say on the contract side of it, like, you can spend this year. You have cap space. And while you can roll it over if you sign a 1-year deal and that deal expires, or if you're, Austin Ekeler, you sign a 2-year deal with almost no money next year, guaranteed, and very little punishment in terms of a cap penalty or dead cap for moving on. Like, who cares? Like, that's basically rolling it over, except for you get a year of production from a guy. And so I think that for, whether it's Mariota, who we'll talk about in a second, Ekeler, some of these guys that maybe you're spending a little bit more money than you'd ideally like to on that position for this year, when you're probably in year one of a rebuild with a number 2 overall pick at quarterback, either playing or sitting behind Marcus Mariota or Sam Howell. We'll talk about that in just a second. Okay, I'm fine with it. And to me, it's more important to set like a foundation. Like, this is a year where you pour concrete. None of this is going to be visible in a couple of years in terms of the house that you are hoping to build towards a Super Bowl above ground. But it's really, really important to get this foundation in and get it right, that you have something to build off of. And that goes back to the character of these guys. It goes back to the types of pros they are. And it's a lot of stuff that sounds real woo-woo as opposed to like, okay, but like the woo-woo is those are a bunch of guys, or these are a bunch of guys that are going to go hit people in the face. And they are fast, physical football players who are pros, who know how to go about their business and are going to go about it in a way that Dan Quinn goes, that's what we want. If you're not doing that, then you're not going to be here for long. And that is really important to change the culture, a phrase we've heard forever around here, to something actually worth changing to.